What is up, Mexit planners? Hey, today I wanted to talk to you guys about the long-term rental market here in Merida, Mexico. Stay tuned. So this week I've had a couple of calls with several MexConnect members, and the topic of discussion has been the long-term rental market here in Merida. So difference number one is going to be just the fact that here in Mexico, or at least in Merida, I think in Guadalajara it may be slightly different, but here in Merida, there doesn't seem to be a central real estate agency or board. So there's no concept of realtors. There are many different independent real estate agents, and I don't know that there's a license process in order to become a real estate agent. So you have to be very careful when spending the type of money that you'll spend. Buying a house or renting a house is going to be your largest purchase that you have when moving abroad. And so make sure that you're comfortable with the agent. Make sure they're not just showing you properties that they have. Make sure they're showing you properties that you want to see and that you're interested in. And so I've heard this week that, they had an agent, they had several agents actually, and many of the agents were simply showing them properties that they had under their listings and not other things. Know that the houses are not exclusive to one particular agent. So point number two is that many of the houses can be listed by and will be listed by multiple agents. Many of the properties are going to have either, many agents representing it. They will also be listed on multiple websites. And rarely are those websites updated when the property is rented. And so we ran into the scenario, back in January of this year, where we were looking at houses. We see a house that we like online, and we call the agent, and all of a sudden that property was no longer available. And so we originally thought maybe something else is going on, but it turns out that because these properties are listed by multiple people, agent 3 could rent the house or sell the house, and agent 1 have no idea because they're not in the same office, they're not a part of the same company, and there's no central MLS system to update the listing. So item number 3 is that that many of the listings are rarely updated. And so, you may see something online. In fact, there are multiple types of online sites for listing property. This tip is you need to be prepared to spend at least 3 to 4 times whatever the rental amount is to get that property. Be prepared to pay first month's rent, last month's rent, a security deposit equal to the rent, as well as a lawyer fee in some cases may be equal to the rent amount. And so in reality, in order to move into a place, you're gonna need to come up with 4 times the rental amount in order to move in some cases. And so there's also in some of those deposits, they say you'll get them back, but again, you're talking about lots of money. And so the biggest thing you need to understand about Mexico in general is they don't have the same level of civil lawsuits that we have in the United States, nor is the process set up in the legal system easily for you to sue someone. So a lot of fraud happens, and before you can get any type of remedy within the court system or any of those things, it may be 10 to 15 years that goes by before your case is even heard. And so the best thing to do is do your due diligence in advance, and to avoid losing a lot of money by taking your time and doing your due diligence as best as you can. But there isn't really a remedy in the court system to handle, evicting people or disputes when it comes to the landlord didn't do this, they're violating their lease, et cetera, et cetera. And so you need to be very careful when renting and spending, what could be thousands of dollars up front to get a place. Oh, number 5 on my list is that notaries here are the equivalent of the lawyers back in the States. And so I've heard many people say that they're a lawyer, and I don't know that that entails a 4-year law degree. I don't know that entails actually going to law school. It seems that a lawyer here or an abogado may not necessarily be the same level or equivalent of experience as in the United States. However, notaries are. the equivalent of our lawyers. So notaries are appointed by the government, and they have obviously consequences if they don't do things on the up and up. And so a notary is who will validate and sign your lease. That is the lawyer that you will see when you go and sign the lease. And so it's almost like a closing scenario when you buy a house in the United States. You have, you know, the renter, you have the leasee, and then the notary, and you guys will go through the process of signing all the paperwork. I actually wrote up a full article on my experience with finding our For Now home on MexitPlans, and so I'll link to that in this video, as well as on the blog post of this video on MexitPlans. There will be a link to that article. So it talks about the entire experience and what's necessary and what was needed and how it went down in doing the long-term rental. Number 6 on my list is some places also require you to have an Aval. And I don't know if that's just a Merida thing or if that's a total Mexico thing, but particularly here in Merida, if you don't have a guarantor, which is what an Aval is, it's someone that's going to guarantee that you pay your rent, that owns property here in the state of Yucatan. If you don't have that, they will generally either require an extra deposit, so that could be a 5th deposit, or they will not rent to you. And so particularly with, you know, recently I've heard stories from expats that were ready to move on to a new place, and they tried to get a spot, but that spot wasn't available available to them because they did not have a guarantor. Even after offering to pay, you know, half a year of the rent up front, it still wasn't available to them because they did not have an Aval. And so it's important to know someone who can either be a guarantor for you or that will be an Aval. There are several folks in Merida that provide that type of service. We have them listed on our our Mexit list. So those folks are referrals to people that will help you as an Aval, also help you find properties and locations, but they are listed, one agency that does that is listed on our Mexit list. And then we have another that is also a real estate agent. So if you're interested in finding out, you know, more about that process, but know an Aval can save you money in the long run, but they're also legally responsible for you. If you skip town, you don't pay the rent, whatever, it can negatively impact them. And so I'm sure there will be a process of interviewing you and understanding who you are before they decide to take that risk. But an Aval is very important because in our particular situation, we save, you know, well over $1,000 by having an Aval as opposed to not having one and having to pay an additional month's worth of rent for the property. Number 7 on my list, and this should probably move up, but one of the key things to know about renting a property long-term in Mexico, period, particularly in Merida, but in Mexico is, you know, in the US we say it's location, location, location. Here in Mexico, I would say it's location, location, and landlord. So let me break it down for you. One, you need to know the location of the property, where the house itself or the apartment or whatever you're renting sits. And why that's important is because it's important to know your neighbors. And so it's important to know, you know, who's around you, how many barking dogs are going to be out there. There's going to be some barking dogs, I promise you. That it's Mexico. And so every nice house I've seen has a dog or 2 or 3. And my neighbor 2 doors down has 6 dogs. And anytime somebody passes, guess what? I hear it if I have my windows open, which they're generally open. And so there's gonna be some barking dogs here in Mexico. That is a fact of life. So it's important to know the location at all times, on the weekends, at night, in the morning, you know, what's going on around that particular property at all times. Also, the location itself, be prepared that it's not going to be, you know, spotless when you go to view it. And so the things you should look out for are the finishings, like what type of countertops do they have, you know, are there cabinets and are there cabinet doors? You know, what type of finishings are in the house? Those things I think are important and will help you decide whether or not, you know, this is going to be a place up to your standard of living. Are there air conditionings in all the rooms? What's comfortable to most people from the States is not necessarily the same comfort level as folks that have grew up in the tropics. And so they don't necessarily have air conditioners in family rooms or in rooms other than the bedrooms. That's the place where you will most likely see air conditionings, but that is not always the case. And then the third point, which is probably the most important point, and also the point that I will make sure that you get, is that the landlord is probably the most important aspect of finding a property. You can find the right house in the right neighborhood, but have a scuzzy landlord, and that will completely ruin your experience. I know many people that have just left their deposits and that have moved because the landlord sucked and didn't want to do anything, and was trying to hustle them out of more money or blaming them for problems, and et cetera, et cetera. So, there's really no way of doing a background check on a landlord. You just kind of have to go with your spidey senses and fill out the situation. I think a big red flag is if they're talking to you in dollars. That's a huge red flag because it's illegal. Everything in Mexico needs to be listed in pesos. And so if they're talking to you or asking you for rent in dollars, that's a huge red flag because the dollar to peso ratio varies quite a bit. And so I know this personally. When the pandemic hit, my rent dropped 30% because of the dollar to peso ratio. And so it's now kind of stabilized back to where it was. It's still less than when I originally rented, but you have to understand that you should not be paying for anything in dollars in Mexico, period. It should all be in pesos. And so that's one of the tips I can give you in terms of how to gauge your landlord and are they going to be a credible person to rent from? Another tip that you need to know is that in Mexico, when you rent a property, you are basically responsible for that property. Now, what the landlords will do in some cases, like my landlord, she gave me 30 days to kind of find anything that was off with the house. So things that didn't work, things that maybe gotten broken or just didn't work because the house had been sitting for some time. And she repaired them all. Every single thing that I've asked, they took care of. And so I have a great landlord. Recently, I had a problem with a leak in the roof. And so she's taking care of that because it's part of the structure of the house. But other small things like a toilet stops working, or your air conditioner is not working, or there's an electrical outlet problem or whatever, that's typically going to be covered by the tenant, not by the landlord. And so I've done a number of repairs. I've called people to repair things. I recently just bought some tools so I can start fixing, small things and saving some money. But those things are going to be your responsibility. They're not necessarily the responsibility of your landlord. And so make sure you understand who's responsible for what, because it's very different from in the States. Just because you're paying rent does not necessarily mean that your landlord is going to be responsible for repairing, small things that happen with the house. Again, location, and landlord is the rule of thumb when renting a property here in Mexico. Number 8 on the list is, do you get furnished or unfurnished? And so we struggled with this when we first got here, and we ultimately decided that we would do an Airbnb. And the reason for the Airbnb is that obviously they're always going to be furnished. And I didn't have to worry about buying things or collecting things or accumulating things when, this was kind of a 6-month trial for us. And so, of course, once we decided, this is the place, this is going to be a good place to set up, we walked around neighborhoods. We looked at different houses in the neighborhoods, which is another big tip. Walk neighborhoods. I have many videos of walking tours and me walking through the streets of different areas just to kind of get to know them. But that's the best place to find rentals, is actually walking the neighborhoods. But to go back to my original point of furnished or unfurnished, not having furniture or not having to own furniture is a big convenience. Expect to pay between $300 to $500 for that convenience of having a furnished place. $300 to $500 more for whatever the rent is what we kind of saw when we were looking between furnished and unfurnished. Also, don't expect the furniture to be up to your comfort levels. And so, it may be functional. You may have a chair in this room. It may be from Walmart. And so it's, it's easily, can be easily torn up or destroyed, but it's a piece of furniture, right? And so I don't think that most people that have rental properties, even in the States, you wouldn't put your highest quality of furniture in a place. And so I think the same concept applies here, where they're just kind of furnishing things out. Now, some of the Airbnbs may have a little nicer furniture because some of the times they're Airbnb, other times the owners may stay there. And so one of the things we found is that the furniture, the range of furniture, it wasn't necessarily what we would want, and so it was easier for us to end up with an unfurnished place. And we actually bought furniture prior to finding a place. It also, finding unfurnished opened up many, many more options than having a furnished place. But again, when you talk about unfurnished in Mexico, that can go from anything from, just having nothing in the house. In our particular situation, that included no appliances, no stove, no refrigerator, no washer, dryer, no air conditioners, right? That was unfurnished. And so it did have ceiling fans in some of the rooms. It had ceiling fans in all of the bedrooms, but it didn't have like ceiling fans in what became our family room. And so I had to put a ceiling fan in there. I had to put 5 or 6 AC units, as well as to purchase appliances, which in the end, I got the things that I wanted that were all energy efficient, but it added several $1,000s to what was the moving price to move into a house. And so be prepared that if you do unfurnished, not only do you have to provide the furnishings, but you may also have to provide the appliances. So number 9 is, you're going to be responsible to repair most things, as opposed to a landlord that is going to, pop in and fix everything that breaks with the house. Now that is on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes landlords are more forgiving than others, but where I've heard people, disgruntled and wanting to leave a place is because, things that seem absolutely like the landlord should fix that, they just didn't. And, ultimately it became a point of contention, and it was just easier to move on from a rental place and leave your deposits and just find somewhere else to stay because you could not live in those conditions. And so know the location of the house, know the condition of the house, and know the landlord. Again, location, and landlord are the 3 things for Mexico. Number 10, the final, the last point. When renting a place in Mexico, the utilities will be in the landlord's name. And so the utilities will be in the owner's name. And what the reason for that statement is a couple of things. One is you will not have a light bill in your name. You will not have a water bill in your name, which are the 2 biggest utilities that you often need for things like registering for school and proving that you live here, and et cetera, et cetera. Also, the light bill, for instance, is done every 2 months, as well as the water bill and most of the major utilities, with the exception of internet and cable. Those are typically done on a monthly basis, but the other bills are generally done every 2 months. Why this is important is if you had a previous tenant that loved to run their AC and they're now in the excessive category, or what's known as DAC or DAC here in Mexico, your utility bills will be higher than your consumption. So the way it works is that there is a subsidy given for a utility usage up to X amount. After that amount, you start to pay you're out of the subsidy, so you start to pay the regular price. That regular price can go up to as much as 3.5 pesos to 4 pesos a kilowatt. And if you're using a lot of AC, that could, absolutely ruin your budget. And so right after, renting a place and paying your rent every month, you also have the cost of utilities, which can be very high depending on the usage of the previous tenant. So a tip that I would give you is to make sure you see some utility bills and the history of those utility bills prior to renting a spot. Otherwise, you could be in for a big surprise when taking over the lease and your utility bills are, just high for, crazy high for regular usage. And so that is the top 10 things that you need to know about renting a property in Mexico, specifically Merida, Mexico. I hope you guys found this information valuable. Please leave me comments in the comment section to let me know what you think. Do me a favor and bang that like button and tickle that subscribe button for me so you can get more information about what we're doing here in Mexico. Until next time, MexitPlan Monty, I'm out.